You're not tired, you're drained. And the most curious thing is, this exhaustion doesn't come from what you do, but from what you tolerate. Few people talk about it, but a big part of your emotional fatigue comes from invisible villains disguised as routine, friendship, productivity, and even self-care. You're sleeping but not resting. You're surrounded by people, but feeling alone. You're always rushing, but not really sure where you're going. This is where Stoicism enters like a hot knife, cutting through the fog in your mind, not as a cold, distant philosophy, but as a practical guide for those who are tired of living in survival mode. The truth is, the problem was never you. The problem is the emotional distractions, the silent comparisons, the perfectionism disguised as excellence, the worry that seems to have no off switch. All of this becomes a heavy operating system that freezes your soul. In this video, you're going to discover the 10 biggest thieves of your emotional energy. And more importantly, you'll learn how to flip the script with simple, practical, and totally accessible actions. Things you can start doing today, even if you're low on motivation. Because deep down, what you want isn't just to rest for a weekend. You want to live a life that doesn't require so much escape. So get ready, because what you're about to hear isn't just another inspirational message. It's a roadmap to your emotional freedom, a path to finally break free from this cycle of pressure, fatigue, and chaos, and maybe find a new kind of strength, an unbreakable one. Some people seem to have a natural talent for draining your energy just by being around. They complain about the weather, the job, the coffee getting cold, and if you let them, even about their own reflection. Stoicism teaches us the importance of protecting our inner space from these influences. It's not about being cold, it's about being wise. You don't have to absorb anyone's emotional chaos. Setting boundaries is an act of self-care, not selfishness. A great way to start applying this is by doing an X-ray of your relationships. Pay attention to how you feel after talking to certain people. If it feels like they've handed you an invisible weight, maybe it's time to rethink how much of your time they deserve. The comparison with mold is spot on. When you let it build up, it poisons the environment. That's why the first step to keeping a clear mind is to watch what kind of energy you're allowing in. And here's something many people overlook. Not every toxic relationship is obvious. Sometimes negativity comes disguised as advice, sarcastic jokes, or that classic, "I'm just being realistic," which only feeds your worry and self-criticism. The Stoic learns to spot these subtleties and respond with calm, not by fighting, but also not by sacrificing their own peace. Knowing who to spend time with is as valuable as knowing what to spend money on. If you've tried everything and still feel surrounded by this kind of energy, you might be forgetting one key detail. Silence is also a choice. You don't have to argue, defend, or explain. Just walk away and protect what keeps you whole. Because when your mind is overloaded with other people's emotional mess, there's no room left for clarity, let alone self-care. And speaking of clarity, there's a silent enemy that wears a noble mask, but only feeds exhaustion. At first glance, perfectionism might seem like a virtue. After all, who doesn't want to do things the best way possible, right? But what many people don't realize is the emotional cost hidden behind this pursuit of perfection. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what's within our control and to give our best, without beating ourselves up over what slipped through the cracks. The perfectionist lives in a constant state of exhaustion because they're always fighting against reality. How many times have you stopped yourself from starting something because it might not turn out perfect? That drains your energy and quietly fuels self-criticism in a subtle yet destructive way. The key is consistency, not rigidity. Want a practical example? Instead of waiting for the perfect conditions to train, write 3 lines in your Stoic journal even if you're tired. Read 1 page from Meditations, or go for a 10-minute walk. Real small actions are worth more than big, paralyzed intentions. On top of that, perfectionism loves company, and it often walks hand in hand with comparison. You look around, see someone who seems more productive or successful, and just like that, everything you've built feels like it crumbles. It's a trap that feeds constant worry and the sense that you're always behind. Stoic philosophy gives a much-needed reality check here. Your focus should be on your progress, not someone else's performance. And it's in this fight against perfectionism that one of the greatest modern challenges lies: learning to rest without guilt. Understanding that sleep is part of productivity, that taking a break isn't weakness, and that embracing mistakes is a form of self-mastery. Those who chase perfection are constantly at war with themselves. And this war is fueled by a very common and dangerous. Comparing yourself to others is like running on a treadmill. You get exhausted, but you don't go anywhere. Stoicism teaches that each person walks a unique path with different challenges, timelines, and circumstances. Comparison, besides being unfair, is a silent thief of your energy and peace. When you measure your worth by someone else's ruler, what's left is frustration, and self-criticism moves in like an unwanted guest. A clear example of this is social media. You see someone posting a productive morning with coffee, reading, and meditation while you haven't even gotten out of bed yet, and boom, a wave of insecurity hits. But social media shows the stage, not the behind the scenes. Living in this cycle of comparison makes you lose sight of what truly matters, your own journey. And without that focus, personal growth fades into a constant worry about what everyone else is doing. Want a practical way to break this cycle? Every day, write down 3 things you're grateful for. This trains your brain to focus on what you have, not on what's missing. Gratitude realigns your attention inward and quiets that destructive comparison. And when you start celebrating your small wins, no matter how minor they seem, you begin to see how far you've already come. That's not just self-care, that's wisdom. And do you know what else fuels this comparison? The false idea that there's a right time for everything. Thinking you should be married, rich, or accomplished by 30, for example, only creates anxiety and mental chaos. This rigid expectation only gets in the way. And if there's one thing that urgently needs to be dismantled to restore your energy and inner peace, it's the habit of holding on to what no longer serves you. Worry is like an app running in the background. It drains your battery without you even noticing. Stoic philosophy teaches that much of our distress comes from trying to control the uncontrollable. The mind gets stuck in what if and what about, while the present moment slips by unnoticed. And in the end, worrying too much doesn't prevent tomorrow's problems, it only steals today's energy. A simple yet powerful technique is the 5-minute rule. If it won't matter in 5 years, don't spend more than 5 minutes dwelling on it. Sounds small, but this kind of filter cuts off the mental avalanche of unnecessary thoughts at the root. When worry isn't managed, it turns into internal chaos, and it affects everything: your sleep, your productivity, your confidence, even your relationships. And suddenly, what started as a thought becomes a cycle. Writing is also a powerful antidote. Grab a notebook and spill everything onto the page: fears, random ideas, expectations. Don't worry about organizing it, just get it out of your head. It's an act of self-care that helps you hear yourself more clearly. Stoicism has always recommended this kind of practice. Marcus Aurelius, for example, didn't write for others, he wrote for himself. It was his way of keeping his mind clear and his energy grounded. Now, if worry has become a constant companion, Maybe it's time to take a look at what in your daily life is feeding that state. Sometimes it's information overload, other times it's toxic relationships draining your peace without you realizing it. And when your routine becomes dull and colorless, your mind starts inventing problems just to have something to focus on. But there is a practical way to break that cycle. When left unchecked, routine becomes an invisible trap. You wake up, go through everything on autopilot, and go to bed feeling like nothing really happened. It drains your energy and suffocates your creativity. Stoicism, while valuing habit, also teaches that it's possible to live with presence, even in the simplest tasks. The key lies in making small changes, taking a different route to work, trying a new coffee, listening to an audiobook in the shower. These small pattern shifts wake up your mind. It's like opening a window in a stuffy room. Want a practical tip? Pick one day a week to do something out of the ordinary, even if it's just cooking a new recipe or walking through a neighborhood you've never been to. The brain loves novelty. When we allow ourselves to break the cycle, even our inner critic quiets down, and worry makes space for curiosity. Monotony also takes hold when we're surrounded by clutter. A messy environment keeps your mind in a constant state of alert. Cleaning your room, organizing your desk, or even clearing out your email inbox might seem minor, but it clears more than just physical space. It clears your mind. It's a form of self-care we often underestimate, but it holds immense restorative power. And if nothing seems enjoyable anymore, maybe your body is asking for something most people neglect: quality rest. Because trying to fight monotony with more stimulation doesn't work when what you really need is restorative sleep. Energy doesn't just come from action, it also comes from the right pause at the right time. A lot of people talk about productivity but forget the basics. No one functions well without proper sleep. Stoicism invites us to live with wisdom, and that includes respecting the limits of the body. Sleep is like internal housekeeping. During the night, the brain organizes ideas, processes emotions, and clears mental clutter. Neglecting that is like trying to work on a computer with too many tabs open and no battery left. And it's not just the quantity that matters, it's the quality. Sleeping with your phone nearby, the lights on, or worries spinning in your head is a sure way to wake up more tired than when you went to bed. Creating a sleep ritual is a practical form of self-care. Turning off screens an hour before bed, taking a warm shower, reading something light like letters from a Stoic, for example, and going to sleep with the intention to rest, not with guilt over what didn't get done. What's curious is that a lot of people actually feel guilty for sleeping. It's like rest has become a luxury, when in reality it's a biological necessity. And without real sleep, no discipline can hold. Self-criticism increases, worry gains strength, and even your mood changes. Toxic relationships become even more draining when we're tired because we lose emotional filters and any conflict feels like a storm. Valuing sleep is a smart decision. And if you're constantly in alert mode, maybe it's time to ask yourself if you're truly sleeping or just collapsing into bed. Because in the end, a good night's sleep can be more transformative than any motivational advice. And speaking of transformation, there's one type of relationship that changes everything when we learn how to handle it wisely. Relationships are like food. Some nourish you, others poison you. And the truth is, no one thrives while surrounded by toxic connections. Stoicism teaches us to remain calm, even in the face of other people's chaos. But that doesn't mean we have to tolerate everything. Knowing how to say no, set boundaries, and walk away when necessary is more than courage. It's pure self-care. Because holding on to relationships that drain your energy is like carrying rocks in your pockets every day. Have you noticed how certain conversations leave you exhausted, even without any arguments? That's a clear sign something's off. And we're not just talking about obvious fights. Sometimes the damage shows up as sarcasm, lack of support, emotional blackmail, or a simple absence of empathy. These relationships quietly make us sick. The Stoic learns to recognize these dynamics and prioritizes what brings peace, not just what brings company. A helpful practice is doing an emotional cleanse from time to time. Write down the names of the people who are most present in your daily life and ask yourself, does this relationship strengthen me or drain me? Is it something worth keeping, or has it turned into emotional clutter? And if cutting ties completely isn't possible, like with family or work connections, it's still possible to set healthy boundaries. Boundaries don't push people away, they protect your well-being. And don't be fooled. When you start relating with more clarity and firmness, even your self-criticism begins to fade. Because a lot of the judgment you place on yourself comes from what you constantly hear around you. Change what comes into your ears, and you change what echoes inside. And that echo, if left unchecked, can become the next silent villain of your well-being. Some people treat themselves more harshly than they'd ever treat a stranger. When unchecked, self-criticism becomes a constant whisper, telling you that nothing is ever good enough. Stoicism, in all its wisdom, shows that excessive judgment is a drain on your vital energy, like spending hours polishing a broken mirror. The mind needs direction, not condemnation, and that begins with a more compassionate view of your own mistakes. Many people confuse self-criticism with responsibility, but they're two very different things. Being responsible means learning from your mistakes. Being overly self-critical means punishing yourself for them. A practical example? Instead of thinking, I'm terrible at this, try saying, I haven't developed this skill yet. That small shift in language lifts the weight of internal pressure and creates space for real growth. That's where emotional self-care begins. The Stoic practice of observing your thoughts without judgment is freeing. When you catch yourself thinking, I'm not good enough, simply acknowledge it and let it pass, without fighting it. It sounds simple, but it's powerful. And it works especially well when combined with daily journaling, guided meditation, or even listening to a mindful podcast like the Daily Stoic or the Brazilian Estoico no Dia a Dia. Self-criticism also tends to spike when we're overwhelmed. When you take on more than you can handle, you start to demand more of yourself than is fair. Then any mistake feels like a total failure. But often, the real issue isn't the mistake. It's the burden of responsibilities that were never meant to be yours in the first place. Carrying the world on your shoulders has almost become a modern badge of honor. But at what cost? The emotional overload caused by poorly managed responsibilities is one of today's biggest energy thieves. Stoicism teaches us to take good care of what's within our control, but it also warns us about the dangers of trying to control everything. Saying no is an act of courage, not failure. It's about protecting your energy from tasks that don't belong to you. Have you noticed how some people are constantly busy but don't really move forward? That's a sign of disorganized priorities. The trick isn't doing more, it's doing what matters. A practical technique is to list your tasks and mark which ones truly contribute to your purpose. The rest, delegate, renegotiate, or simply remove them. Because the more you try to hold the world, the further you drift from yourself. And here's something people rarely talk about. Doing everything alone feeds perfectionism. The belief that no one can do it as well as you is tempting, but it's false. Trusting, sharing, asking for help, that's emotional maturity. In fact, a person who sleeps well, takes care of their body, and knows how to delegate tends to be more creative, more composed, and less reactive. The energy you gain when you stop being a multitasker becomes powerful fuel for the things that truly matter. Of course, it's not always possible to drop everything at once. The first step is learning to notice when the weight begins to exceed a healthy limit. You start forgetting things, snapping easily, losing joy in small wins. And when that happens, maybe what you need isn't more time, but more acceptance of what you simply can't change. There are battles we only win when we stop fighting them. Stoicism teaches that there's a fundamental difference between what we can change and what simply needs to be accepted. Fighting against what already is, besides being useless, drains an absurd amount of energy. It's like rowing against the current with a hole in your boat. You get tired, frustrated, and still end up sinking. Acceptance isn't weakness, it's practical wisdom. Accepting reality doesn't mean giving up. It means redirecting your energy to what actually matters. Did something happen that's beyond your control? Breathe, analyze, adjust what you can, and move on. A simple example: you lost a client, a friendship ended, or something didn't go as planned. Instead of drowning in worry, use it as fuel to act with more presence in your next decisions. That's self-care in the form of conscious action. A lot of people spend weeks, months, even years ruminating over things that already happened, feeding perfectionism, self-criticism, and even getting sick from it. When you accept, your mind relaxes. And when your mind relaxes, you sleep better, relate better, and regain clarity about what you truly want to build. Acceptance is a reset button, a necessary silence in the middle of life's noise. And it's in that silence where real inner power is born. That moment when you realize you don't need total control to be at peace. You just need direction, discipline, serenity, and a little bit of humor to handle the ups and downs. Because in the end, being unbreakable isn't about being perfect. It's about knowing when to persist, when to pause, and most importantly, when to let go. Now tell me, how long are you going to keep treating your emotional exhaustion like it's just a lack of time? Throughout this video, you've seen that the real villains aren't in what you do, they're in what you tolerate. Toxic relationships, uncontrolled self-criticism, constant comparison. All of it slowly drains your energy, like a faucet that never stops dripping. The question is, are you going to keep letting that leak go unchecked? Stoicism didn't come to turn you into a monk disconnected from reality. It came to give you clarity in chaos, focus in the middle of disorder, and peace even when everything feels out of place. But none of this knowledge matters if it stays in theory. So what are you going to change today? What habit, what thought, what pattern are you going to reevaluate right now? Because knowing is good, but applying is what creates transformation. If you connected with this, drop a comment below and tell me which of these villains affects you the most. I want to know what hit hardest for you. And don't forget to share this video with someone who's also feeling drained but doesn't know why. That person might be you, just 2 days ago. And of course, if this content helped you in any way, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications. Because here, you'll learn how to become unbreakable, inside and out.